how to prevent and what to do. Answers to questions regarding the purchase and operation of a second-hand Infiniti FX first generation. The Infiniti brand, a subsidiary of Nissan, appeared relatively recently. At first, to promote luxury models to the American market. Having tasted the fruits of success, the Japanese Americans decided to conquer Russia, and later Western Europe. Therefore, in the secondary market there are mainly Russian, so-called dealer, as well as American cars. The choice is huge. Let's talk about how not to make a mistake with it. The owners of Infiniti FX call their cars dates, and they are valued for their extraordinary design and handling. At the same time, cars have an impressive ground clearance, 200 millimeters, and, as a rule, all-wheel drive. Rear-wheel drive only some Americans. By the way, the front cardan shaft is without grease fittings of the crosses. Therefore, when it is worn out, up to 160,000 kilometers, it is replaced as an assembly for 29,070 rubles. The CD changer sometimes refuses to read discs. Dealers do not repair, but for 5,000 to 6,000 rubles. You can find masters on the internet for 3,000 to 4,000 rubles. They are ready to teach an American receiver to work on Russian radio frequencies, as well as convert miles in Fahrenheit to kilometers and degrees Celsius that are more familiar to us. Despite the more attractive price, cars from across the ocean are still less preferable. Rear lighting does not meet our standards, and you can't easily install European lights. They are not lamps, but LEDs. In addition, you will have to change the BCM unit responsible for switching the electronics. They are different for lamps and LEDs. And then reprogram the keys. An immobilizer is sewn in the block. For everything they will ask for 15,700 rubles. Please note that the unit does not like voltage surges and current surges, so starting the engine with a dead battery and lighting it up is highly undesirable. In addition, the Americans have a much weaker chrome coating of decorative body elements, as well as twisted mileage all the time. It is very difficult to establish the true one, the erased errors with the chronology of their appearance, by which you can catch the seller in a dirty trick, can only be seen with the help of factory equipment. The dealer's scanner, alas, is blind. Dealers rely more on secondary signs, upholstery wear, oil seal wear, etc. Do not save on such diagnostics, especially since it is not so expensive compared to the price of the car itself, some 6,400 rubles. Typical malfunction: you press the button, and the trunk lock is silent. This is due to contacts in the button that have oxidized into dust. If you press harder, you will have to change not only the switch with the bracket, but also the chrome lining of the fifth door. Check the operation of the buttons on the door handles and fifth door, rear wiper, rear view camera and horns. Sometimes the climate fan motor burns out, most often due to increased load when the cabin filter is clogged. According to the regulations, it is changed after 30,000 kilometers, but on dusty roads it is better to reduce the interval. Weekly kept varnish on the door handles. It happens that the electric lock locks, the fuel gauge sensor fail, which happens more often again on cars from the USA. But the main thing is that the Yankees save on oil. It seems that they change it on time, according to the regulations, after 10,000 kilometers, but they pour something cheaper. The VQ35DE V6 3.5L and VK45DE V8 4.5L engines were installed on the S50 model. Both codes were in the top 10 of the world. However, strict environmental regulations forced the introduction of collectors. They became the weak link, products filled with precious metals, 81,520 rubles with replacement, moved into the category of consumables. The problems are the same as on the Nissan Murano. Honeycombs melt and ceramic particles fly into the engine cylinders. Dealers blame bad fuel, and owners, referring to all sorts of forums on the internet, these engines are put on many Nissans and Infiniti models, blame the manufacturer. Say, the engine control unit does not respond properly to interruptions in ignition. It is late in adjusting the composition of the mixture, which leads to overheating of the converters. The truth, apparently, is somewhere in the middle. The VQ37 engines on the second generation model appeared relatively recently, so it's premature to guess how the converters will behave. The oil dipstick, as on the VQ35 engine, is more convenient than on the V8. We strongly recommend that you carry out diagnostics before buying a car in order to determine the degree of destruction of the converters by signals from the upper and lower oxygen sensors. If the car is already yours, and the process has begun, urgently for repairs. Remember, for a motor, where products of converters are like a handful of sand. Unofficials usually remove the filling and reflash the engine control unit. It's bad, of course, but what to do if the body aga at the gas station is still not translated? Pay attention to the condition and level of oil in the engine. Do not consider the advice banal. Infiniti engines tend to devour oil, and owners sometimes find out about this only by the signal of an emergency pressure lamp. A serviceable engine should consume 100 g of oil per 1,000 kilometers, while the volume between the max and min marks on the dipstick is only a liter. It turns out that even an ideal engine barely fits into the interval between scheduled maintenance, 10,000 kilometers. What can we say about the old unit? Dealers begin to sound the alarm at oil consumption of more than 2 liters per 10,000 kilometers, being confident from their own experience in excessive wear of the cylinder piston group. Compression does not reach 11 kilograms/cm superscript 2. And the reason is no longer so important, whether the neutralizers began to crumble, or they overlooked the oil. Under the hood of the FX45, the dipstick is easily accessible, but the tube is sharply bent in several places, making inserting it difficult. Maybe that's why many owners don't bother checking the oil level. The main VIN and the alternate plate are shown with arrows. Motors are very sensitive to overheating, especially VK45DE. The consequence is that it breaks the head gaskets of the block, which you will immediately notice on the blackened walls of the expansion tank. The reason is most often in the radiator cells clogged with dirt and fluff. To check them, it is enough to remove the plastic shield over the radiators, but many people neglect such a simple procedure. Like, what is there to look at if you still can't remove the dirt without dismantling the radiators? If your hands do not reach, entrust cleaning to specialists. It will cost less than replacing gaskets. If immediately after starting a cold engine, the timing drive clanks, it's time to change the tensioner. On the V6, this is easy. Remove the drive belts and the hatch in front of the engine. On the V8, access is not so good. You have to remove the radiators with fans. At the same time, make sure that the latter are in good condition, since with a run of under 150,000 kilometers, one of them probably no longer spins. If the speed floats or the engine stalls at idle, it's time to flush the throttle assembly. Please note that after this you will need to calibrate on a dealer's scanner. In addition to the collectors, a couple more neutralizers are installed under the bottom. They begin to break down only at very high mileage, without affecting the mechanical wear of the CPG. The front cardan and automatic transmission are still normal here, mileage 134,000 kilometers. The 5-speed automatic Jacko, although called adaptive, is poorly adapted to a sporty driving style. The clutches burn out. Officials do not change them, offering to fork out for a new box, 340,000 rubles with a replacement. And not because they do not know how to repair, but because of the lack of original spare parts. The plant supplies only complete control units, valves, and hydroblocks, although there are fewer problems with them. Do not despair. On the internet you will find many companies ready for 150 to 170,000 rubles. Put in order even the most dead unit. In order not to waste money, regularly check the oil, ATF Matic D, aka Dextrin 3. If it turns from red to yellow, then it has lost its properties in many ways and it's time to change it, but it has darkened and smells of burning. Gearbox repair is just around the corner. By the way, according to the American regulations, the oil is not changed at all in Europe after 60,000 kilometers, which is another reason for the more deplorable state of the car from overseas. Yes, and their handouts often fail, refusing to connect the front axle at the most crucial moment. The weak link of the rear multi-link is the stabilizer bushings and wheel bearings. Sometimes it is difficult to adjust the angles of the wheels. The fasteners turn sour. If necessary, lubricate the connections with anti-corrosive. In the front suspension, shock absorbers deserve attention. Sometimes they jam. Tie rods and stabilizer bushings wear out by 100,000 and 40,000 kilometers, respectively. Stabilizer struts often hold more than 120,000 kilometers. Front hub assemblies and rear hub bearings, replaced separately, are not known for longevity and can start to buzz or play after hitting a seemingly trifling obstacle. There are a lot of worries with the brakes. Both the front and the rear discs often warp, and the pads sometimes wear out over 5 to 7,000 kilometers. Even if you drive very prudently, the front ones do not live more than 30,000, and the rear ones, 40,000 kilometers. At the same time, the resource of the front discs does not exceed 80,000, the rear, 100,000 kilometers, but again, if they do not lead earlier. The cost per kilometer of the FX35 model, calculated according to the method of this column, turned out to be higher than that of the Nissan Murano with the same engine, 17.77 rubles/kilometer. A more significant loss in the cost of the car affected, which, in general, is not surprising for the premium class.